What was cricket's biggest, for want of a much better word, sliding door moment?
Overarm bowling. They
Since
fought,
World War II.
They fought overarm bowling for 60 years. If we hadn't got overarm bowling, we would not be sitting here today because this sport would be absolutely, utterly useless if it was underarm bowling. It would be done in pub gardens everywhere.
What about...
Did I go back too far? I'm sorry, I answered your question.
What about a moment that wouldn't have necessarily happened? Like, you would have thought front foot and back foot play would have happened if W.G. Grace hadn't done it.
Technicality.
Overarm bowling, somebody else would have done it.
Women's cricket.
They fought it for 60 years.
Women's cricket.
What moment? And what when you say women's cricket, what do you mean?
Well, the sliding doors moment is Harmanpreet Kaur, isn't it? When she goes nuts in the semi-final.
Why have women not been playing cricket?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
so the non-sliding doors moment in a weird way.
And then, to get wise.
Well, you tell me.
Play.
Why?
Women play. Of course they play. Why not? Why not?
Do you know what? There's so much evidence that women invented cricket. You know the story? I saw this. Alyssa Healy said this recently on their podcast, and she was like, women invented overarm bowling. That story's completely false. Yeah. Right? We know that story's false.
Well, she believes it.
Right?
Fair enough.
No, lots of people believe it, but we know it's false, right? So many of us have now looked into it. It's not true. Women actually invented cricket, right? There's plenty of evidence to say that the sport of cricket was invented by milkmaids in Sussex and Surrey and Kent, in that sort of area, and they invented the sport. And when cricket started, it was essentially a sport for couples to go off and play together, so that they could go out in the middle for a little while and hang out, and then head off into the grass for a little while.
John, there's nothing I can add to this, by the way.
They went off. I thought Bumble would like this. They would go off and they would play together.
I wasn't there. I wanted to let you know I wasn't there in the grass.
And then they would disappear as a couple.
Oh my goodness me!
Roll around. What? You've got to do stuff once you've been dismissed. And we all get upset. You would have done that with your teammates too, I'm assuming. No. Anyway, the point is that women played a huge role in early cricket, and then we basically went out of our way to stop them playing. In fact, the first women's professional league is in the late 1800s, and the guy who set it up stole all the money and disappeared, and the league sort of completely collapsed on it, right? So I think the sliding doors moment, there's probably two for women's cricket. One is when the ICC finally take over women's cricket, because the women as an amateur organisation just couldn't get to the level that it needed to be.
So what year was that?
Was around the early 2000s, wasn't it? Because I think the one in India was the women was certainly run by the former organisation. But I think the big moment is Harmanpreet Kaur at Derby when she smashes Australia. The ratings go through the roof. I think Cricinfo crashed that day. There were so many hits. And it was just a huge moment. And so that is what has built the Women's Premier League, which is already arguably one of the biggest women's sporting leagues in the world. It's probably in the biggest two or three women's sporting leagues already. And that was 2017? Like, that wasn't that long ago that she played that innings. I think that's a huge sliding doors moment. I was at that knock, Bumble. She hit the ball either side of deep mid wicket about 9 times. If she picks out deep mid wicket on one of those shots, maybe the Women's Premier League is still not existing, and that has changed everything, hasn't it? That has allowed for women for the first time ever. You probably would, you would know Susie Bates. Susie Bates almost retired because she was like, well, I've done it all. Like, there's nothing left to do. The only reason she stayed in cricket was because she got paid. So I'm with Bumble. I think women's game, sliding door. I think those two moments of bring it in with the ICC so that we could cross promote it. And in the was it 2012 and 2016, they were joint tournaments, remember, as well. So you were there, if you were there to cover the men's cricket, there was a women's game as well. So you covered both. In fact, it might have been the same in 2009 as well, or 2008, whenever it was out here. So I think those are huge moments. And in the future of cricket, the women coming to cricket is probably and especially the way they have in the last 10 years, is probably going to be one of the most important things that's ever happened.
And sky's the limit for it as well. They've a long way to go. Yeah. Athleticism has to come into it.
Professionalism.
Fitness. Yeah. Conditioning. They've still got a long way to go in that regard.
I was talking to Susie Bates, and she was saying, there's no reason why women can't bowl 130 kilometres an hour. Like, biomechanically, they should be able to get to that speed. She said, but there's no woman who from the age of 12 through the age of 25 has been in a fast bowling program. Right? Like, these things take time. But women's cricket's gone from... I was at that 2009 semi-final that England smashed Australia in. And then I was at the first women's hundreds game. right? That was a domestic franchise game, and the other one was a World Cup semi-final. The difference in quality was incredible. Like once you got to the 100, you were like, this is the beginnings of professional cricket. And the other one was amateur cricketers, playing on their days off and doing the best that they could.
See, that's an element I wanted to mention. Is there still, or I know there is, still quite a big gap between the top international women's sides and
it'll grow. It'll grow.
It will.
Definitely.
But that moment that you talk about where the women's game changed and the audience went up, and obviously you only have to turn on the WPL to see the crowds in. So India looks like it's not leading the way, because then you look at the successes of Australia.
Brilliant.
England, of course, have hit a poor patch,
but they're still not a terrible
professionalism team. And you've got the women's professional league starting up again this year in a different guise, so that's going full steam ahead. New Zealand has just won the T20 World Cup.
South Africa were the favourites in that tournament at times.
So
West Indies won not that long ago.
If you compare the men's game, the drop-off's there as well.
But once again, Australia are the team to aspire to. Yeah. They're the team that are athletic, they're conditioned, they're fit. Now, you mentioned England are just on a bit of a downslope, and you can see why. They've been left behind. They're not athletic, or a number of them are not athletic. They're not fit enough, and they're not conditioned. Now, that I'd be quite frustrated with that if I was in charge or involved in that setup. There's no excuse. You have to be fit, you have to be conditioned, you have to be athletic at that level. You really do. And Australia are leading the way.
I think you're right and you're wrong. I think what you're trying to say really is it's outside of the top 5.5 teams, I think. There's a huge drop-off. So Bangladesh, I think, are coming through. Pakistan have played some okay cricket, but teams like Ireland, just haven't quite stepped up. The Zimbabwean women have struggled at times as well. Whereas if you look at men's cricket right now, you're probably every tournament you come in with about 5 teams, maybe 6 teams who could potentially win it, and a bunch of other teams who might make the finals. But you go down to the 13th and 14th teams where you have, UAE and Namibia and Netherlands and Scotland, whoever's in that sort of range. They're really good sides. Whereas in the women's cricket, there's a huge drop-off once you get outside the top 8 or 9 teams.
But there's a challenge there, a challenge to lift the standard.
But men's cricket had the same thing when it was amateur, right? Yeah. So as professionalism comes through, I would expect that. You now have, I think in the Women's Premier League, you have Scottish players, playing in India now, right? Like, I don't think we've had a Scottish man play in the IPL. So we are starting to see players from outside the mainstream come in. And so, I think that's the biggest thing that's happened. The other thing that I would say, and I know you'll say post-World War II, but the ICC forming is a really big thing, right? Because that's the biggest sliding door moment where we lose Ireland, we lose America, we lose Argentina, we lose most of Europe, right? What could cricket have been if we didn't make it a private men's club in 1911 for no reason, right? Like, it didn't need to be an empire-led Commonwealth sport. That's huge, right? Because we're still fighting that every single day. You always said to me, like, in my job, I've got like 12 teams to write about, but if I was a football writer, I'd have like 50. Yeah. Right. And you're right. Like we don't have that. And that was a huge moment made by a bunch of idiots who had no foresight. Well, they're a bunch of idiots, right? With no foresight, friends of the show. And we've ended up with now an ICC that we don't even really like or trust. And maybe the Saudis are about to buy the whole thing anyway, right? Like, so everything could change. So for me, not allowing women to play cricket for about 180 years and forming a private men's club based around the Commonwealth were probably the two things that have held cricket back as much as possible. And then I would say the Men's World Cup. So I know that starts with the women again, weirdly, but Rachel Hayhoe Flint, being involved with the invention of a Cricket World Cup in 1973 had probably changed cricket the most, because from 1975 onwards, Sri Lanka come through, Zimbabwe come through, Afghanistan, Ireland, Bangladesh, all these teams came through. They all play Test cricket, but where do we first know about them? Through the World Cups. And 1975 is the first Men's World Cup, and by the 1980s is the first time when Australia and England are not the two best teams, right? Like, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think there was a reason for the other teams to get better, because once the West Indies started winning World Cups, then India wanted to win World Cups, then Pakistan wanted to win World Cups, right?
And where's it going to go then? With women's cricket, that is. And I think there's actually a link there because, you've got, 2 countries in the world, Brazil and Thailand, I think. They've got women's teams and not men's teams.
Well, they have men's teams, but their women's teams are where they pump all their money, isn't it? Yeah. I was just speaking in America and I was saying the same thing. It was like, eventually the American men's team might be a very good team. But if I only had a couple of $1 million, where would I be investing it at the moment? There's so much more growth in the women's game, right? You can do so much more with $2 million in the women's game than you can with $2 million in the men's game. So I don't think that Brazil and Thailand are going to be the only 2 teams looking at it going, it might cost us $20 million a year to be good at men's cricket. It might cost us $3 million a year to be pretty good in women's cricket.